Hey guys, Tim Anderson here, aka Renfail from Stormhaven Studios and Saga Elysium, and today we're going to be talking about gated content. So, most people familiar with this concept. Some of you who are from the modern generation of MMORPGs might not understand what this means. Gated content is essentially anything that has a barrier of entry to it. So, think of any sort of series of content that has a prerequisite series of quests or some sort of faction limit that you have to get before you're allowed to access that content. Now, a lot of the times in the older games, I'm thinking EverQuest 1 in particular, even EverQuest 2 to some degree, Vanguard, there was always a series of raid content. This also exists in World of Warcraft, and not so much these days as it did in vanilla. Even Lord of the Rings Online used to have gated content. It doesn't anymore. At least not that I know of. I haven't been playing it very long recently, so it's been about 10 years since I've played it. But anyway, going back to those early examples, I know that EverQuest 1 in particular, there used to be a smaller subsection of the community who would continually complain that it wasn't fair that there was gated content, that they didn't have access to the same content that everyone else did. And this also exists in World of Warcraft, which is why eventually you got to the point where everything got watered down to where everyone could get the same type of gear by running instances, even if they were solo or with 2 or 3 people, as opposed to needing a full group or even needing a full raid. Now, the best gear is still typically only available if you are raiding, but for the most part, a lot of the dungeon-specific gear has an equivalent now that someone can go out and solo, because there was just a lot of complaining from a lot of people that it wasn't fair, that they didn't have access to the content. And in order for the developers to have enough subscriptions to make enough money to keep the investors happy, they just kind of removed barriers of entry and got rid of gated content and just kind of let everyone in and let everyone do anything. When we're looking at how we're developing our game, we're definitely looking at using gated content. For us, we look at gated content as a way of leveraging levels of difficulty and having a series of steps that players need to go through, which inspires people to work together and work with other people as they are working their way up that chain of progression. Now, some people complain about this. Some people say that it's not fair. I'm paying a monthly subscription to a game, or I bought a box, therefore I should have equal access to all of the content. I would like to take a step back from that for a minute, because as the Olympics have been going on right now, this just kind of spun into my mind the other day on Friday, which is when I did the blog post for this particular entry. Let's look at bicycles, for example. I am a hobbyist. I will ride a bike on the weekends with my wife when we go out and rent a bike. In Cancun, we owned bikes, and we would ride them 2 or 3 times a week when we want to go to the beach. Other people ride bikes every day for their commute to work. Other people ride bikes cross country because they want to do it for an adventure. Other people ride bikes for exercise, and they go out on the weekends and they go up the mountains and they go in the canyons. Other people are into taking their bikes to the skate parks and doing that for fun on the weekends, just as much as I used to do with my skateboard. That's all sorts of people there with bicycles. And then there's the next level of cycling, which is people who go and participate in the X Games, or people who get sponsorship from Red Bull, or people who go and participate in the Olympics. There is a certain barrier of entry to those elite levels of cycling that I will never be able to attain. The reason for that is because I am a casual cyclist. Okay? I only ride a bike once, maybe twice a week. I don't do it for sports. I don't do it for exercise. I do it for fun. I don't do it at the level of professionalism that I would need to do if I wanted to obtain sponsorship or to get into some sort of a sports program. So using that as an example, the barrier of entry to get into the Olympics, for example, or the X Games, is that not only do I have to own a bike, I need to be willing to go out and practice on that bike for 6, 8, 10 hours a day and dedicate all of my spare time, and in the case if I want to pursue it professionally, all of my time, if I'm going to do this as a career, into taking my cycling skills to that elite level. There is no difference between that type of gated content and gated content in an MMORPG. Just because I own a bicycle or have access to a bicycle does not mean that I automatically deserve the accolades that an Olympic level athlete deserves, okay? Nor will I ever achieve that level of accolade because I'm never going to pass that barrier of entry, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just life. Not everyone is destined to be an Olympic level athlete. And the same thing applies to an MMORPG. There are hundreds of different ways that you can ride a bike. There are hundreds of different ways that you can play an MMORPG. And just because there is gated content in the game doesn't mean that everyone deserves equal access to that content. It's there, it's available. If a player wants to work towards achieving that elite level of gameplay and getting into the best raid content and getting the best raid gear and getting the best, of everything, then they will have to put forth the time plus effort. It's not just about time, it is about effort, about working with others, about achieving something that is greater than what you can achieve on your own. Because anybody can go out there and ride a bike on the weekend and do it for fun, but not everyone can compete in a team at the level that it takes to get into the Olympics. So just use that example when you're thinking about gated content, because that's how we're looking at gated content in our game. We hate using the term end game because that signifies that we're putting all of the content at the end, and that is absolutely not the case. We've talked about this very publicly in the past, that we're trying to only put, if we had to do an estimate, I would say maybe 10 to 15% of the content of the game is going to be end game, and the other 85 to 90% is the entire world that players will be inhabiting. The world quests, the zone quests, the dungeon quests, the factions, the languages, the crafting, the exploration, all of that stuff. The Volume 1 storyline, which contains raids, is a very small portion of that overall world. So even though we do have some level of gated content and some level of end game in our game, it's very small compared to the rest of the world, but it will be there. There will be gated content in our game, and if you want to compete, if you want to complete, I should say, not compete, if you want to complete the Volume 1 storyline, you will need to be in a guild, and you will need to raid, and you will have to put forth time plus effort in order to complete those storylines. They won't be available to just everyone. The rest of the world, the 85 to 90% of the game, will be obtainable by anyone who goes out there and plays with a small group of friends. But there will be a small fraction of the game that will be gated, and you'll have to get together with other people if you want to become that Olympian athlete and obtain the higher levels of content and fame and accolades that go along with it. So, what are your thoughts on gated content? Do you like gated content? If so, why? Do you not like gated content? Why don't you like gated content? Let us know. Don't forget to follow along. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Every Monday we're coming out with new episodes. Also starting recently, because now that I'm in Mexico City with decent internet, we're doing a live walkthrough of this. So if you want to discuss this with me live, show up tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/renfail and participate. We're going to be talking about this particular blog post and this video live with the community tonight as we work through the pros and cons of gated content and talk a little bit more about what we're going to be doing with the Saga of Leucemia. Beyond that, I'll see you guys next Monday for the next episode of Mondays in MMORPGs, and if you haven't yet done so, please go back and watch the previous library because there's quite a few episodes already up. With that in mind, I just walked in the house a few minutes ago, so I'm going to go cook some lunch, take off my hat, take a shower, and enjoy the rest of my Sunday afternoon. Talk to you guys later. See ya.